Hi, testing. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Great. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today and what is the last of the Beat the GMAT, Write Like an Expert series. I am very happy to be here and participate. This is something that I've done with them for many years and love doing. So glad you all could join us. Let me start off by introducing myself. Oops, sorry. Here we go. Okay. So my name is Stacey Oyler, and I work with ClearAdmit. We are one of the educational counseling firms that are out there that help guide applicants through the MBA process, specifically for top 10, top 15 US and European programs. I have been with ClearAdmit for 5 years. And prior to joining, I was at McKinsey and Company, where I led their MBA, advanced professional degree, and undergraduate recruiting programs. And prior to that, I was assistant director of admissions at the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth. And basically, in that role in admissions, I did what most people do. I traveled the world and gave presentations, I conducted interviews, I read applications, I participated in all of the admissions decisions, as well as managed the waitlist and the feedback process for candidates that were not granted admission. So overall, I've been in the MBA admissions and recruiting space for about 13 years. So today, you guys are joined to listen to me talk about Stern's essay topics. And I love Stern. I think it's just a great school and always has some pretty interesting topics for applicants. And it gives a great, they're a school that gives applicants a great opportunity to really express themselves and feel like they got to say a little bit about who they are and not just their professional experience. And I really do like that about Stern. So what we're going to do today is just go through the essay questions. I'm just going to give you some ideas and some feedback on how you might want to approach these and think about them as you begin drafting them, since the deadlines are coming up quickly. I'll even try and share a couple of examples for each essay just to kind of help get the creative juices flowing and see if it's something that might help guide you in the right direction. At the end of the presentation, we'll do a Q&A and I'll answer your questions. So definitely, as you think of them, start sending them our way so that we can ask them, or I can ask them and answer them at the end of the presentation. So the thing about Stern, so let's go ahead and get started. So Stern is interesting in that they haven't changed their essay prompts this year as compared to the previous year. But what they did do is they basically have changed it so that you're only required to respond to an optional essay, meaning that you get to pick one of the ones that you want to respond to. So while the prompts haven't changed, they've made the optional component a little bit different this year. This means by doing that, they've basically reduced the total words in the essay portion of their application to between 750 and 1,250 words, which last year the range was 1,250 to 1,750. So this is obviously depending on which option you pick for essay 2, but I think that's interesting because I think they're still allowing candidates to really express themselves and show different sides of who they are beyond just their professional experience and goals. But they're also realizing that they don't need as many words to do that, and that there's a lot of other channels and different ways that applicants can do it, and they give them that opportunity, but also not the pressure to spend so much time writing. So I think that's a really notable change. Another thing is no one is actually required to respond to their largely open-ended sort of creative essay, whereas last year that was mandatory and everyone who applied had to. This year they're making it optional, and I'm not sure what was really driving that decision. I think it's a hard essay to tackle, the creative component of it, but those that do it often do it really well. So I think by making it optional, it will help maybe candidates that might be a little bit afraid or gun shy about the idea of doing it will still want to apply, and it won't steer them away because they don't have to do that one. It's now optional rather than mandatory. So that's a great change. And essay 1 obviously is still essentially concerned with discovering an applicant's professional goals and reasons for pursuing an MBA from Stern. But meanwhile, applicants may choose a strictly career-focused option A for essay 2 that reprises Stern's directive to consider 2 professional paths. So we'll go into each of these a little bit more detail. I don't want to confuse everyone here at the beginning, but I just wanted to lay out here on these first couple of slides just the questions that they're asking. And but let's go ahead and move to the next slide here. This is actually more of the continued of the overall questions. So here we are. Sorry, I'm kind of skipping ahead, but that's okay. So essay one. Essay one, I'm just going to read it out loud just so we can all hear it in case you're listening but not watching. And basically it's asking, what are the professional aspirations? 750 word maximum. Why pursue an MBA at this point in your career? Is a mandatory component to this question. So basically, it's a really pointed question about the timing of your application. And in general, as a rule of thumb, when you're applying to business school, it's really important to clearly demonstrate that you're at a turning point in your career, that this is a natural time for you to want to leave your job. And whether that's because you've sort of hit a ceiling in terms of learning or opportunities, or you can't get promoted without a degree, or whatever the reason might be, it's really critical that you actually spell it out. And they're flat out asking you to do that here in this essay prompt. So you need to be very clear and conveying a fairly immediate need for an MBA in very concise terms. Don't expect that they'll look at your resume and go, oh, he's been in banking for 3 years. Of course he needs an MBA. Don't expect that. They're flat out asking you to tell them. So by not answering that, you wouldn't be responding to the question. So time sensitive is a key part. And also that it just makes sense to do it now and not later, and kind of let them know that if I did this in a couple of years, it might really derail my goals, whether that's the short-term or the long-term goals. Just really spell it out for them. Don't assume that they can just figure it out. And then the next part of that is, what actions have you taken to determine that Stern is the best fit for your MBA experience? And so Stern is really sensitive to the fact that candidates are indeed targeting their program. I mean, they do have Columbia in their backyard, and I think that there's often this idea out there, or perception, that Stern is perhaps a what's the word I'm looking for? It's perhaps a second choice for those that didn't get into Columbia. And I think that Stern's a fantastic program, and they don't really have any reason to fear, but at the same time, they need to feel loved. They need to feel like people that apply really want to be there and have taken the time to get to know them. So homework is the word that I use here in the slide, assessing how much homework the applicant has done about the program. And you really do want to do a lot of homework if you apply to Stern and as a school where that matters. And so what I mean by homework is you really want to go and visit if you can. It's a little bit challenging when you apply in round one, just given the timing of the deadline and classes starting and when they're giving tours and things like that. It's often difficult to do. So if you're applying round one, please do not panic and think you suddenly need to book a flight to Stern and spend a day there and then have very limited time to write about it in your essays. It's not critical that you do that. If you can, or if you're applying in round two, I think it's a great idea. Just in order to really learn more about the culture and the community. But there are other ways to do that, right? Every business school pretty much travels the globe at this time of year and conducts information sessions. So attending one of those is a fantastic way to learn more about the school. They're typically hosted by an admissions committee member, and they often have an alumni panel or a bunch of alumni in attendance. And so it's a great way to learn about the school, meet a decision maker, shake their hand, introduce yourself, and also to meet alumni, because often you'll find people that are working in the industry in which you wish to join or came from the industry which you're in right now, and you can really relate to them and maybe learn a lot about them or learn a lot about the school from them, right? They might have ideas on classes to take or professors or great experiences that happen to them that they can share. Usually I found when I would plan these events for Tuck and attend them, the alumni that would attend would often be sort of graduates within the last 5 years. Those are the ones that tend to show up at these things, and that's actually great when you're going as a candidate, as an applicant, because it's a very recent and relevant experience that they can share with you, not something that's 20 years old that was great and they're not sure is still happening. So definitely take advantage of information sessions. Also see about connecting with current students. Some schools actually have ambassador programs or student connection programs. Tuck does this, Columbia does this. A lot of schools do it where they'll connect you with a current student to answer questions so you can learn more about the program. But don't rely on the school to do this for you at the same time. I mean, all of applying to business school is about networking and making connections and proving that that you've got what it takes to be there, and that requires a little bit of extra work on an applicant's part. So go on their website, look at clubs that you might want to join, whether they're professional clubs like a consulting club or a finance club, or they're more extracurricular clubs, something around health and wellness and nutrition, or the wine club, or whatever it might be. But really just find a way to reach out to club leaders. They're all used to getting emails from people. You won't be bothering them, but you also want to be respectful of their time because you aren't the only person who's probably emailing them asking questions. But see if you can get 10 minutes on the phone with them, or if you could have a nice, pleasant email exchange with them. That's a really great way to just learn a lot about a program and a lot about the things that clubs do that maybe aren't on their website and aren't sort of readily available knowledge. An example that I would give of that is when I worked at Tuck, they had the consulting club, and they would do a consulting trek every year where they would go to Boston for 3 days, and they would go visit firms like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, and really have like sort of intimate time with these firms. They would often have them for lunch or cocktails or dinners, and really spend a lot of time kind of one-on-one time with these students, which was just a wonderful opportunity, but not something that you would know just by looking at the website for the school. So let's look and see what Stern has in terms of your interest and find ways to connect with people and learn more about it. Because I think it's easy to sort of quote back, great professors or famous courses and things like that. And that really, anything you can glean from the website in less than 10 minutes doesn't really have an impact on the admissions committee. And one of the worst things that you can do is sort of regurgitate their marketing materials, kind of saying back to them what they go on the road to say, like, we are a close knit community. And then you say, I'm attracted to the close knit community. It doesn't really work that well. So this homework part is really crucial. If you do it right, it's going to take you some time, but it's going to pay dividends when you interview and in your essays. So definitely find ways to interact. Look for alumni at your current job or with friends, and just use your network as best as you can. So the other part of this question, so it is a three-part question, is what do you see yourself doing professionally upon graduation? This is a really standard career goals question. So far you've said, I'm at a natural turning point. I really, really like Stern, and this is why. And now you're saying, and this is what I want to do. Really being specific here is important. I think a lot of applicants to business school just don't understand that, yes, they can go there and learn whatever they want and do whatever they want when they graduate, but they've got to get there. And in order to get there, you have to have a really concise, specific story. And I'm not saying that you have to be really sort of pigeonhole yourself into a specific role, meaning that you don't have to say, I want to go work for X company and Y role. And if I don't know what I'll do. I mean, you don't want to just be so specific that you're sort of locked into one opportunity and don't look flexible, but you want to take enough time to demonstrate that you've made an effort and you really know what it is that you want to do. So saying, I'm attracted to companies such as X and Y, and I can see myself doing this type of a role. So you don't have to say, I want to be an analyst at X company, but you can say, I really see myself working in this area of this organization. It really connects with my goals or my identity or my personal philosophy, whatever it might be, to just show that there's a fit there and that you spent some time trying to figure this out. So go and look at different companies that you're interested in. Look at their websites, spend some time seeing who their clients are, the type of work that they're doing, anything that you can do that you can really relate to and feed that into this part of the essay is really important. I mean, essentially, Stern is asking you a 750-word essay that's a standard goals essay. So they're really giving you a lot of space. Some schools only give you 500 words for this. They're actually giving you a lot of space to really answer the three prompts that they're looking for. Your short-term path should definitely be a logical sort of first step to achieving your long-term plan. A lot of people go to business school to change careers, and a lot of people go to advance in their career. It doesn't matter which one of those you want to do. You just need to have a really great story about why you want to do it, why now is the time to do it, and really have shown that you thought this through. I know that when I worked at Tuck and I would read our goals essay, Um, one of the things that I would look for was if they were convincing goals. I wasn't running their essay over to the career services office and asking them, would they get hired in this job? Do you think that they could really get this job? That wasn't my decision to make as an admissions officer. My decision, and the reason that I was looking at a goals essay, was really to determine whether or not the goals seemed feasible and logical and attainable. Again, not going to sit there and think, well, the school only hires 10 people. Would this be one of the 10 people that go into that? That wasn't my job, and I didn't know that, and that didn't matter. It was more, is this person convincing? Have they thought this through? Do they have an action plan in place? Those are the things they're looking at. And I can tell you, it's a really, really easy way, the goals essay, to deny a candidate. If they don't seem like they've really put thought into it, or don't really seem to need an MBA to do what they want to do, if there seems like another route to achieving the same end, the same means to an end, then I would say they didn't need to come here. So we often write vague goals, and it was a great way to deny somebody. So there's a lot of pressure on this, but at the same time, every school asks for goals. You're asked for goals in every interview. So the story is critical anyway to your application for every school. So really having well thought out defined goals isn't unique to Stern per se. It's just part of the process. So um, so let's go ahead and move on to the next part of the essay. So basically, if you have questions about this part of it, about the career goals essay, please feel free to start, sending them over now so that we don't miss them or you don't forget them by the time we get to the second half of the presentation. It might be easy to sort of forget what you were thinking earlier on. So please start feeding questions. I will be going through them at the end, so don't worry about putting it in early. I will get to it. It won't get overlooked. So the next part of the essay, so essay 2, there's 2 options, right? There's option A and option B. And one of them is kind of a standard sort of path essay. And then the other is the creative essay. So let's talk first about the 2 paths. And basically they're saying 2 different distinct paths that you could see your career taking long term. And how do you see your career, describe 2 different and distinct paths you could see your career taking long term. How do you see your 2 paths unfolding? How do your paths tie into the mission of Stern? And what factors will most determine which path you would like to take? Okay, so a lot of people are afraid of this essay. Other schools have asked something similar, like a backup plan type of question, and it scares people away. They think that the admissions committee is using this to trick them and say, aha, you don't really know what you want to do or why you want to go to business school because you have another plan. And that's not the point of this essay at all. I think it's actually a great opportunity, especially for someone who's like, I would be happy doing a couple of different things, and maybe I'm really passionate about a particular industry, but I haven't yet decided what role or path I see myself taking in that industry. You don't say it like that, but it's a great way to demonstrate that, you know what, you've got things that you really like and you could be excited to do different things, because especially given this economy, not everybody gets to do what they want to do when they graduate from business school. So just be sure that your long-term plans make sense in light of your professional background or established personal interest, right? That they can't be out of left field. Well, I'd like to go work in banking, but if that doesn't work out, I could really see myself in pharmaceutical sales. That wouldn't make any sense, right? And that might have been a weird example, but I think it's just important that the 2 paths at least have some sort of common tie or bond to them, so that it doesn't look like, wow, this person really doesn't know what they want to do. They're interested in banking and then they're also interested in nutrition or whatever it might be. So line them up with your short-term goals mentioned in essay 1, and have a connection to Stern's mission, right? It's really crucial that you connect to the school. They're kind of asking you, how do your paths tie into the mission of NYU Stern? So it's really crucial that you consider just what needs to be communicated here, and what you want to share. Again, this kind of goes back to the idea that there's another really great business school just down the street from them, and so they want to be sure that you spend some time and really kind of figured out how what you want to do really connects with the school and your fit with the school. So it's important to really think that through a bit before you respond. So again, you have 500 words here, which is actually, I think, a pretty good amount of words. In my ideal world, I think a 500-word essay makes the most sense. It's enough to really convey a solid message. without feeling like you have extra space to fill. And shorter answers like 250 are really challenging. So 500 words is great. You do sort of rule of thumb want to not go over by more than about 5%. We used to say 10%, but now applications and the way that they're viewed are a little bit different, and it's kind of better to stick to the 5% rule in general. So not a lot of words and not a lot of room to go over. It used to be 10, but now it's 5. But so thinking about that and how you can get your message apart, I think it's a pretty decent amount. And then I just kind of wanted to give an example here, actually, of a client that I had, and this is similar to her goals, but not exactly them, because I definitely wanted to protect her identity. This is from a couple of years ago. And her example for what she wanted to do, her long-term goal was she really saw herself doing sort of a branding or marketing type of role in a fitness apparel company, but a smaller company, like Lululemon, which does sort of yoga and that type of wear, fitness apparel. So she really wanted to go into a smaller organization and just get involved in marketing. And the idea of joining a smaller company is you kind of get your hands on a lot of different things and can really learn a lot and wear a lot of different hats. So that was sort of her dream. But then she also recognized, like, that might be a dream for a lot of people, and it's a small company and it may not really happen, right? And so I have to be realistic. So then she thought, well, my second path would be to go to a large company, total polar opposite, go to something like Nike and really just get to know how a large corporation works and learn from that. What are the things that they're doing that are really great that could be applied to a smaller business? What are the things that they're doing that are just crazy and only a large company could do, right? With the idea of then starting her own small sort of apparel company or consulting firm. So I don't remember which path we ended up deciding upon specifically for her, but what was nice was she had these two examples, and they all have one common thread, right? They were both focused on sort of the fitness and apparel industry, and they were both kind of focused on marketing and branding and sort of the takeaways that you could get from a larger organization or a smaller organization. So I think that she did a really nice job of not moving away from her idea of fitness and apparel, but also recognizing that smaller companies are harder to get roles in, and that maybe there are benefits of going to a larger one. So the point is just be thoughtful here and really prove that you've spent some time with this or some time thinking this through. So I think I'm going to go ahead and move on here to option B. And option B is unchanged from previous years. And this essay option basically gives applicants a chance to showcase their creative side by allowing them a broad range of possible media in which to express themselves. We always say non-perishable, right? Candidates with an artistic inclination or those who harbor a passion that can be better conveyed through a method other than the prose might seriously want to consider submitting a poem, a photograph, some sort of other material or electronic representation of their message. I think that in this day and age, with Pinterest and Tumblr and Twitter, and there's just so many ways to communicate than there were even 10 years ago, that a lot of people really want to take advantage of this because it's something that they're comfortable with and very comfortable sort of expressing themselves in media or through ideas or thoughts or images. And so it's a great idea. However, it's also crucial to carefully consider just what needs to be communicated in this introduction to your future classmates. And I just realized I did not read the question. So let me back up and read the question. I apologize. It is, please describe yourself to your MBA classmates. That you may use almost any method to convey your message. Words, illustrations, feel free to be creative. So really open-ended, right? So what I was saying is it's crucial to carefully consider just what needs to be communicated in this introduction to your future classmates, especially now that this essay is optional. This used to be mandatory. This is the first year it's optional. Thus, it's sort of raising the stakes for applicants. What I like about this essay is that no one can ever say Stern didn't give them the opportunity to really stand out and show them who they are. This is a great option if you find yourself in a really large applicant pool where you're very concerned about standing out. Because frankly, just talking about your professional goals and why Stern, if you're in a large pool, it can be very challenging to get noticed and get remembered. And at the end of the day, that's how you get into business school. right? Everyone can have the same credentials. It's the people that they remember that get in, the people that get noticed, that tell the right stories, that just catch someone's eye, that get in. So you might want to seriously think about this option if you are in a larger pool. You also might want to think about it if you just have something really cool that you do and want to share, or something that you're really passionate about, that you just feel like is a huge part of who you are and sort of shapes your thoughts and your values. And so no one can ever say Stern does not give them the opportunity for expression. So but really think about it, think about your message for delivering this. If you don't want to get creative, that's okay. It might be better to stick with the more traditional option A. I don't think you're penalized for using option A. It's really doing the one that makes the most sense for you. And in thinking about this essay, you'll want to think reflectively about your values and your personality, as well as strategically about what makes you unique with respect to other applicants. You want to communicate your enthusiasm about meeting and working with your fellow students and comment on ways that you would engage with them that aren't covered in your first essay. So you don't want to sit there and talk about all the great things that you're attracted to Stern about, or that attract you to Stern that you talked about in your first essay. Don't do that. This is unique, new information. This is not to repeat something. So with these concerns in mind, it's not that big of a surprise that over the years that we at ClearMet, we've sort of found that the written word tends to be an effective format for most applicants. They're a little bit fearful of doing something beyond the written word. There's still a great deal of room in which to be creative. For instance, your essay might be an opening chapter to an autobiography or a snapshot about your typical day. So writing is still an option. Don't feel this pressure to do some sort of media or mail them something. You can, just remember it has to be non-perishable. I wanted to share an example here, actually, of someone I worked with a few years ago, and I just thought that he did this really well, and he had his own idea, and he came to me just for some feedback on it. And so I cannot take credit for this wonderful thing that he did, but he was just this really enthusiastic guy, and he had a friend with some high-end video equipment, and he went and shot an infomercial about himself. And it was creative, it was funny. He clearly is a great writer. He is sort of a comedian. He has a great voice. And it's sort of, when you think about an infomercial, but wait, there's more. And it was all about sort of selling himself and branding himself for what he was going to do at that school and what he does now. He works, he plays, it was really funny. I think there was a little bit of risk, but I will tell you it had very high production value. And what I mean is he didn't just take his phone and have his friend film this. He had a script. He had wardrobe that he had planned for this. They had a very high quality camera. He edited the heck out of this thing. It was clear that it wasn't just like, oh, I've got 5 minutes in my phone, let me just throw something together. It was very well thought out. He included his dog and his wife, and he made it just a really wonderful video, and just so memorable, right? Even if he didn't necessarily have anything that unique to convey, the way that he did it was unique, right? And he did get in, and I think he might have graduated by now, but he did a really great job. And so I'd like to give that example. I certainly would not use that example because they will know that was taken from someone previously, but I think it's just a nice example of being creative and finding something he was good at, and he was funny, and I think it worked really well for him. So keep that in mind. But then also, if you're a poet or an artist or a photographer or whatever it may be, I mean, this is your chance to stand out and get noticed and kind of do whatever you want. It's really open-ended here. So take advantage of that. Again, this is a great way for someone who might be in a large applicant pool and worried about their ability to stand out to do just that. So think that through and maybe consider that in lieu of essay A. So not a lot of essays for Stern, which just basically means I have a lot of time for Q&A. So I'm going to just kind of go over a couple of things here about ClearAdmit and our services. But while I do that, this is a great time for you to start sending over your questions, and I'm happy to answer them. So just a few resources that we have. One of the things that I love about ClearAdmit is that we have these great publications, and we have school guides, strategy guides, interview guides. We even have things called school snapshots, which are basically like mini guides or condensed versions of, and they're free online about different schools. So if you're still sort of in research mode, the school snapshots are huge, or you can go on and just learn a lot about a school very quickly. So definitely check out our publications. We did a wonderful navigating the admissions process video series with Beat the GMAT in collaboration with them a few years back. And so it's an online series that kind of walks you through the whole process and how to think about everything from start to finish in the applications and in the interviews and things like that. So check that out. And then the other thing, I wish you could see me sitting here right now, is we have this really awesome iPhone app to help you organize dates, deadlines, and just getting your stuff done for business school. So definitely check out our iPhone app. I think it's great. And then our blog is really helpful, sort of like Beat the GMAT is as well, which I look at their website every day in terms of just sort of seeing, news, advice, and different resources for business school. So definitely check that out. I see some questions are starting to pour in here. So I'm going to go back to my slide here just quickly. Whoops, now everyone gets to see my whole computer there. Just that has at least some of the questions, just so that they're up and fresh in case you're looking at them. But let me go back over here. Sorry, guys, you can't see my scrolling and stuff. And let me just start fielding some of your questions here. So for essay 1, is it important to write A, B, and C in that order? That's a great question. Yes. I don't think it's a deal breaker if you don't, but it's kind of a logical flow. I mean, why do you need an MBA? Why Stern, and what do you want to do with your MBA from Stern, right? So I think if you kind of mixed it up and said, this is my long-term goal, this is why I need to do it now, and this is why I need to do it at Stern, it would still work, but effectively, they're kind of asking it in this order because they prefer to read it in this order. And I think that when you're reading a couple, a dozen applications a day, you kind of get used to the way things should flow. And so my advice is yes, follow it. Follow the ABC. I think it's just, again, probably not mandatory, but just a good idea. So great question. Great question. And then let's see. Oh, a lot of questions here. Okay, next one is, for re-applicants, is Essay 3 a must, given their re-apps need to show improvement over their previous app, or will a great Essay 1 do the trick? Now, I'm not totally sure what they mean about Essay 3 a must. I'm guessing that they mean option B. I mean, here's the deal. I think reapplicants have it hard because they have to kind of go back and do it all over again and show improvement. And often they have to do it in a very limited amount of time, meaning that maybe they just applied in January and now it's October. Like, wow, how have I really changed in 10 months? And I think it's important to just sort of keep in perspective that as a reapplicant, you're not asked to reinvent yourself. It's actually really weird if you reinvent yourself. If you suddenly come back a changed person with different goals and different values and different ideas, it can be a little bit odd. What you're supposed to do is come back as a new, insightful, improved version of your previous self, meaning that you read your application, you were able to see through a self-assessment where you fell short and address that. So maybe your goals are the same, but you have a new perspective on how you might achieve them, right? Again, don't need new goals, don't need to be a new person, but do need to put effort into it. They're not likely going to read your previous application from cover to cover, but they're going to go to the end of it where they had their notes on why they didn't let you in. And they're going to read those very carefully. And then they're going to read your new application and they're going to look to see if you address that. So really it's about being insightful, thoughtful, being able to evaluate oneself and identify weakness and address that and have that perspective. That matters most. So I'm not totally sure I answered your question, but I'm not actually totally sure I understood your question. So my point is, put effort into this. Definitely put effort into this, especially this is your second shot. You can't do this a third time. You really just want to do it 2 times and be done. So really don't be afraid to put in the extra effort. If you did something really amazing last year and you're worried about how you can top that or beat that, then don't do that one. Do the other option and talk about 2 different paths. That's okay too. Let's see, sort of scrolling through here. And let's see. Any advice on when Essay 3 should be used? when it would be optional or absolutely necessary. Okay, I think that there's some confusion here around essay 3, and that might be my fault. I'm not sure in the way that I perhaps rambled too much during my presentation. But there is essay 1, mandatory, which is the ABC, YMBA, what actions have you taken, and what do you see yourself, to learn about Stern, and what do you see yourself doing? And then there's essay 2, of which there are 2 options. So there are not 3 essays that you must write for Stern. I think that maybe I am confusing everybody with that. So the option is whether to do the creative essay or the 2 paths essay. That is the option. Does not matter which one you choose. It does not matter. Stern is not going to be disappointed if you didn't mail them something at all. Like if you didn't mail them your shoes or whatever, they're not going to be disappointed. You've got to pick the right one for you. So I'm sorry if I've confused everybody with how many essay questions Stern has. I think all the options A's and A, B's, and C's maybe made it a little bit confusing, and I apologize if I sort of convoluted that in my presentation here. If someone's actually talking about an optional essay, which they might be, the optional essay is not something that was part of this. It's something that almost every business school has at the end of all of their essays, and it's literally, is there anything else you need to tell us or want to share? My advice on the optional essay is do not do the optional essay unless you truly need to address a red flag in your application. Do not use it to talk about the wonderful European vacation that you had last year, or to talk about your dog, or to talk about some great essay that you wrote for another school that you just really, really wanted to share because it was so beautiful. Don't. It's meant, when you do an optional essay for a school, optional meaning not option A or B, but optional essay, it is to explain a gap in work history, a low GMAT score, a low GPA, an extra amount of time to complete your undergrad. It's meant to explain things that you worry without explanation might be considered red flags. So don't do an optional essay unless you have something important that you need to interpret for them. Why you didn't use your current supervisor as a recommender is another great reason to do it. But again, it's not to talk about something that you just really want to talk about, because you're asking for more time, and admissions committees do not like it when someone asks for more time and then writes 700 words about their dog, right? So keep that in mind. So I think I'm finally catching on to what you guys are saying, and I apologize. Sometimes when I'm reading these typed out, it's a little bit harder for me to interpret their meaning. Can you please tell us the weighting or the weightage of the GMAT for Stern applications? So Stern isn't like any other business, or is like every other business school, let me rephrase, and that there are 3 components to a successful business school application. And there are 3 things that an applicant must be aware of when they apply. Academics, that is undergraduate, any advanced degrees, performance GPA, GMAT, and then any additional coursework that one might have taken. That compromises academics. The second thing is professional experience. It's your career trajectory relative to your peers. It's the type of industry that you're working in, the type of work that you're doing, how long you've been doing it. That's professional experience. And then the third sort of silo that they're looking at is extracurricular. That does not mean volunteer activity. It's obviously included in that, but it can mean literally your hobbies and your personal interests, things that you're just doing outside of the office. So those are the 3 things: academics, professional, and extracurricular. Academics are one part of it. I can tell you that it's really rare for someone to apply to business school that's amazing in all 3 of those categories. Usually someone has a weaker category, like they're a rock star at work, but because of that, they have no life outside of work, so they have no extracurricular activities. Or they did an amazing job in school and they have tons of volunteer work, but maybe their career isn't quite where it should be just yet. They're a little bit behind their peers. It's very normal to be a little bit less in one category than, perfect in all 3. So when it comes to sort of how the GMAT is weighted, yes, it's an indication of academic abilities and performance capabilities, but it's not a deal breaker. The general rule of thumb that I tell people is sort of 700, nice neutral score. Anything above starts to help, anything below starts to hurt. So again, though, it's not the only factor. They're looking at additional coursework. They're looking at GPA. They're looking at quantitative abilities in your job, things that you're doing at work that require quant skills. They're looking at your transcripts from undergrad. How many quantitative classes did you take? Those things all go into the academic portion. So it's not simply a let's look at the score and use that to determine yes or no. It's definitely considered with other factors in the academic part of the profile. Let me scroll down here. So, okay, so that was, okay, next question. The Stern is the best fit part. Without a campus visit, how do you angle the info you've collected about Stern without it sounding contrived or weak? Okay, not everyone can visit campus. Schools know this. They don't expect this. There's a lot of people that just can't fly across the country or the world to go and visit, and certainly not before a deadline of round one. So there is not this expectation. It's clearly a wonderful thing if you can do it, but there are so many other ways to learn about the school that I don't know how it could feel contrived unless it simply was. For instance, a lot of people will go and visit a campus and they'll sit in on class and they'll go to a Q&A, but they'll be too shy to talk to anybody and they don't really get a lot out of it, right? So make the most of whatever it is that you can do. So if that's emailing club leaders and talking to them, if that's stalking current students and learning from them, if that's finding alumni in your company and learning from them. I mean, I think there's a lot of questions around, like, do I mention my name? Do I say in my conversation with Jennifer Smith? Yes, absolutely. You can say, I spoke with Jennifer, who is the head of the consulting club, and I was excited to learn about X, Y, and Z. That's fine. You just want to prove you did the research. You want to fit it in a nice way into your essays, which is why they kind of give you the flow for which to do that. And they're asking you to do that. So it's not really contrived, it's required. Hopefully I answered that question. So keep the questions coming. I still have quite a few to filter through here, but we do have about 10 more minutes of Q&A. So please keep them coming and hopefully we'll be able to get through all of them. So for option A of essay 2, how different and distinct, wait, where did it go? How different and distinct should the two paths be? Is there a good example for this? Well, I gave an example in my presentation, but perhaps not everybody was able to tune in for part of that, where I did that. So I personally feel that if they're very different and they're very distinct, it might be a little bit odd or might raise a little red flag. I think that no matter what, there has to be some sort of common theme that binds them. So meaning, for instance, in the example that I gave, it was about a woman that wanted to go and work in branding and marketing for Lululemon Apparel, which is a smaller boutique fitness company, apparel company. That was her dream. That was her goal. Smaller, growing organization, really get involved in that. That didn't work. She'd go to Nike. And from Nike, gain experience enough to go and start her own small brand and boutique of fitness apparel. So the whole idea was sort of grounded in that she was going to work in fitness apparel and in that industry no matter what. It just depended on how she was going to do it, right? And I think that was really fair, kind of given the economy, to say that maybe getting that coveted job at Lululemon might be impossible. And so Nike might be a much better option for her. So I think it's about being realistic and grounding it with a common theme. I think that that's probably the most important part of it. I think that if someone does something risky and says, I want to go into banking, and if not, I would like to become, I don't even know, a professional skier. I know you don't go to business school for that. That's a little bit strange, right? So you want them to definitely have some sort of common theme and driving passion, because then it could call into question your original goals essay as well. So try and tie it back to what you wrote in essay 1 in terms of your goals, so that everything is sort of connected and rooted together. The next question, how would you recommend that younger applicants prove the need for an MBA? That's really hard. I have to tell you, I think that when you're a younger applicant, and I'm talking kind of less than 2 years of experience, or you're an older applicant, and I'm talking kind of more than 5 years of experience, I think both ends of the spectrum here really can struggle with that. Because when you're older, it's kind of like, hey, you've been working a while, you're doing really well. Why do you really need to leave and go get your MBA? Are you just bored? What's happening here? And when you're younger, I think the opposite of that is true, and that you're often like, wow, they've only been working for a year and a half. How do they know that now is truly the right time? They've got so much ahead of them. I don't really believe that they're at a natural turning point or hit a ceiling, right? That can be a little bit harder. So it's really becomes more of, I've been doing this for a while. I really enjoy it. However, I have this passion for this other thing. And I think that this is sort of a story to tell. And I think that my knowledge of this industry combined with my passion for what I want to do in my MBA would make me very successful in that goal. So it's not necessarily like, hey, I'm at a natural turning point. It's like, hey, I've amassed this skill set. I have something I really want to do. I think if I go and get my MBA now, I can really achieve that, right? And really that you're thoughtful and you're combining, not throwing away what you've done, but combining the skills what you've done. Even if you're switching industries, taking that knowledge combined with an MBA to achieve that goal. It is harder to do, and I will tell you, when admissions committees read essay or goals essays from younger applicants, that's something that they're very mindful of. It's like, is there another way they could achieve this? They've been working a year and a half. Couldn't they just stay for 2 more years and have this goal? Or couldn't they just go into the ground floor in the other industry that they want to do and work their way up? They're so young, they could do that. So they're already kind of thinking those things. So it's really important that those are top of mind for you and that you address them and don't leave them wondering. Hopefully I answered that question okay. This question sort of relates to a lot of other questions I've received, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. Does Stern like students who pay a visit to the school? It's great if you could visit Stern. Great, great, great. If you're international, which it sounds like this person is because they ask recommendations for international candidates, what do? You go to the information sessions. They travel all over the world and give presentations. When I was at Tuck, I would pack a suitcase in September and come home in November. So they are all over the place and they are giving presentations. Find one near you. If you live in, I have a client that lived in Phoenix. The closest one was in LA. He went to LA and he went to the presentation. A lot easier to get to LA than it is to get to New York, right? Find a way to connect with people. If you cannot go to an information session, connect with current students, find alumni. LinkedIn is amazing for finding people and talking to them. Just remember, you'll do the same thing when you graduate and someone wants to talk to you, you'll give them your time because someone gave you their time. Email club leaders. Look for students, ways to connect with current students. Look for interns that are at your company that might just be finishing up for the summer. Find ways to connect. It's not an expectation that you visit. It's an expectation that you talk to people and really explore the school and know that it's a right fit for you. Here's another question. In the creative submission, is it all right to repeat some of the information that you would have put in the other parts of the application, although not in the other essays, such as, say, extracurriculars? Okay, so I think what they're asking here is basically, I've got this really cool hobby or I've got this really cool activity that I'm part of and it's in my data forms. I've listed it there. It's maybe on my resume too because it's a big part of my life. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the perfect thing to use for your creative submission. Perfect. If you are a crazy knitter, knit them something, right? It's probably on your resume that you're a crazy knitter and knit them something, right? So don't avoid it, but don't, I guess what I'm saying is don't sit there and do something creative about your career goals because you've already talked about that, right? Do something creative that's truly an aspect and element of who you are as a person. That's what they're looking for. So yes, if you've mentioned it in the data form on your resume, that's okay. Just don't repeat themes that you already spoke about in essay one because that just sort of shows that you have a poor, the one maybe has a poor idea of how to use their space wisely and needs more space to talk about the same thing. And you don't want that. You want them to know, hey, I've got my goals covered in the 750 words you gave me. Thank you so much. Here's something totally different about me that you don't know from my other essay. Let's see. How are we doing on time? I can go through probably 1 or 2 more questions here. So someone asked actually, after I got the younger question, and I got the older question. So someone asked earlier about, how they view younger applicants, and someone now has asked me, how does Stern view older applicants? What are some of the concerns they may have about older applicants? And it depends on how old older applicants might be. I think that it's really important to have an awareness that you are an older applicant, that you are further along in your career than most people that are there. But because of that, that's a strength and not a liability, right? So really emphasizing what others can learn from you is important, not just what you can get out of the program. I think that's important for everybody to feel like I'm here, I'm contributing, others will learn from me. I'm not just here to learn for myself and gain everything for myself. Um, Also, the turning point, it's really important to say, hey, I'm mature. I've been working for a while. I am doing all of these things and I'm really good at them. But this is what I really want to do. And I cannot do this without an MBA. You have to be sure that they understand that the MBA is necessary and critical to achieve your goals and not just I am really fried and burned out. This is a great way for me to jump ship sort of vehicle. So be really thoughtful and mindful of that when you write your essay. It's necessary, it's critical. If they don't let you in, they're ruining your goals, they're ruining your life type of approach. But be very thoughtful that you are bringing more to the table and others will benefit from that, right? You're not a liability because of that. You're actually a tremendous benefit to their community. And think about approaching it that way. I'm going to answer just this one last question here. I think this is probably all we have time for. And it's a good one. It's, can you give advice on how to mitigate a weakness, i.e. a low GPA or a GMAT score? Yes. So everyone has a weakness. As I said earlier, there's sort of three things. There's academics, there's professional experience, and there's extracurricular activities. Those are kind of the three things that an admissions committee is looking for. Usually an applicant is weaker in one of these areas. Not necessarily weak, but weaker. If it's a low GMAT or a low GPA, take some classes. Go out there, prove you can do the coursework. Go take accounting, go take statistics, go take finance. Prove it. Prove you can do the work. Don't just say you can, show them you can. So take classes if it's an academic need. If it's extracurricular, it's a little bit harder to do because it looks contrived. If you suddenly started walking dogs at a shelter next week and you applied a month later, that would look weird. So you really can't do that. You just own that. And you focus on things that you used to do in undergrad and use that to tie that into the fact that you would be involved in the community there, right? Often there's a lot of candidates that did a ton of undergrad, but they have jobs that just don't allow them to do stuff outside of work right now due to the hours. But there's a nice way of sort of showing on the resume, wow, look at what all they did in undergrad. They were in 15 different clubs and led 10 of them. They're probably going to be really involved here. So find ways to demonstrate that. Don't focus on your past. Don't write about undergrad because then it looks like you're stuck in something from a long time ago. But definitely highlight that in your application and your data forms on your resume so they can see, well, he's not doing a lot of work right now, but it looks like he did a ton when he was in school before. He's likely to be involved here as well. So that's basically, I think, the best way to mitigate things, and then play up the area that's your strength. Recognize, hey, my academics aren't great, but man, do I have a really great professional record, and play that up. Demonstrate that, put that out there. Show, don't tell. Play up your strengths and downplay your weaknesses. So thank you all for joining today. I think we're going to wrap that up, but I did want to say a couple of things. The chat board on the wall, and I may have said it incorrectly, but the chat area on the Stern wall in the NBA watch section is kind of live all day with questions, and I'll be on there for a little while this afternoon fielding some questions as well. So feel free to visit that if you didn't get your fill or all of your answers from this. Definitely take advantage of that. And I think this is the last one in the series. So thank you all for participating in their Write Like an Expert series, and thank you to Beat the GMAT for allowing me to be a part of it again this year. Thanks so much, everybody, and good luck on your applications.